Hello again. I'm back. And I have some really important stuff to talk about. I haven't stopped doing what I do, but my angle has kind of shifted. I'm just putting this out for you. If you're seeing this, if you're one of my subscribers, if you're one of the few people who actually found some value in what I was doing, this is for you. You're the kind of person who's ready to hear this. This is going to be no frills, no fancy footwork, nothing like that. I'm not going to work on search engine optimization. I'm not going to worry about a thumbnail. I'm not going to worry about a title. I just need to say this. So, forgive the clickbait sounding phrasing here, but I believe I've solved universal change. So I've come up with this equation. In short, all change, all of it, in the observable universe arises from what I call a recursion, a recursive effect, interacting with a limit. So, limit times recursion equals effect. The difficult part here is identifying what I mean. Now, before I get started, I want to say I haven't changed physics in any way. I haven't come up with anything new in particular. All I did was identify a theme that seems to keep popping up throughout the entirety of physics. Every time we solve something, it seems to be some function of the following equation. And it looks to me like nobody's put their finger quite right on it yet. So, what is a limit? That's fairly obvious. A limit is something that resists, something that opposes, right? Something that opposes something occurring. In a circuit, it would be a resistor. In traditional gravitational physics, it would be mass usually. Mass is usually the limit. Now this is the part that's going to take a little bit of doing. Explaining what a recursion is. But I think I can do it fairly simply. Recursion, as I've defined it, is a change occurring over time. One thing comparing its state against itself over time. The simplest example I can give you is speed. What is speed? People think speed is how fast you're moving. They consider it to be its own individual quantity. Speed is speed, all the way up and all the way down. But what is speed really? Speed is the difference between an object at point 1 at time 1 compared against an object at point 2 at time 2. And the equation for this in physics is delta x over delta t, as in difference in position over difference in time. So a recursion, as in to reoccur, is a state changing over time and comparing against itself, the differentiation between 2 points. And every recursion recurses farther, recurses again, to create a higher order emergence of recursion. First you have position. What is the difference in position over the difference in time? That's speed. Position 1, position 2, compare them, that's your speed. That's how fast you're going. So now we have speed, or in physics, it's called velocity, but functionally it's the same as speed. What happens when speed recurses? What is the difference in speed 1, an object over here moving at a certain speed, and then the speed changes by the time it gets here? What is that? That's acceleration. Delta S over delta T is acceleration. What is the recursion of acceleration? This is where it gets a little abstract. Most people haven't heard of this. I hadn't heard of it until I looked into it. Difference in speed over difference in time, or delta S over delta T. Or sorry, acceleration. Again, I'm not going to edit this. It's all going to have to be a one take, so please bear with me. And I know if anybody's going to, it's going to be you, because you're here. And I love you for that. It's been so hard to get anybody to listen to me because of my... Doesn't matter. So, acceleration. What is the recursion of acceleration? Acceleration here, that changes on its way over to here. What is that? That is called jerk. It's usually used in bridge engineering, right? For structural integrity calculations and things like that. So, what is the recursion of jerk? It gets kind of funny, but these are the names. The recursion of jerk is called snap. Delta J over delta T is snap. Now, what is the recursion of snap? The recursion of snap, delta S over delta T. I don't know if you still use S for snap because you use it for speed. Actually, oh geez. Okay, you're still with me. I don't need to trip all over the wording because you're still listening. The difference in snap is called crackle, right? So what is the recursion of crackle? What happens when crackle changes over time? Delta C over delta T. That's called pop, right? And then what's the recursion of pop? Well, we don't really have a name for it, but it is a quantity, usually given by an exponent, right? So, functionally, what I'm saying is you have to find, in any closed system, any system at all that changes, any system in the universe that we can observe a change in, has a recursion in it. So, first you identify the recursive quantity. Difference in what over difference in time, that's your recursion, that's your change. You multiply that by a limit, or a resistance, and that gives you the measurable outcome. Physics already uses this a lot. It's utilized in thermodynamics. Forgive me, I can't remember the equation for thermodynamics off the top of my head. It's used in Ohm's Law for calculating physics and electromagnetism, and it's used in Newton's second law, used for calculating force in traditional physics, i.e. gravitational physics, right? So, let's start with the one that you're most likely to know. Force equals mass times acceleration. That is the equation for force in the vacuum of space as given by Newton, right? That's Newton's second law. So, which part is the resistance? Mass. Mass resists the force, right? So what is the recursive effect in this equation? Acceleration. Fairly obviously, because I did just explain that acceleration is just a recursion of speed. So, you have the recursion of speed creating acceleration multiplied by the mass of the object creates the force of the object. There's one. Ohm's Law. Very similar. This one is used, like I said, in electromagnetism, which is where my Navy training comes in. That's what I learned in the Navy. That is V equals I times R, or voltage equals current times resistance. This one's not quite so obvious, but it's still there. People just don't think about it. What is the limit in V equals I times R? Well, fairly obviously it's resistance. Resistance is the limit, acting on this closed system. What is the recursion? It's current. People think of current just like they think of speed as its own individual thing, but it's not. Current is actually the difference in electron flow over time. So the number of electrons flowing over here at time over here, the number of electrons flowing over here at the second time, and you compare them. So that would be, I forget what it is. Let's just use F because flow, but I don't know if they actually use F. So that would be delta F over delta T. So now we have delta F over delta T creating current multiplied by the limiting factor, in this case resistance. And this equation keeps popping up everywhere. So in any closed system, the difference between 2 points of change over time multiplied by a resistive element and limiting element creates a measurable effect. And this happens everywhere. Like I said, in thermodynamics, in electromagnetism, in gravitational physics, in everything. And every single time I try to apply this, it works again. Here's an example that blew my mind a little bit. All right, so I found myself thinking, hey, don't they say the universe is expanding? And theoretically, that is a recursion. The expansion of the universe is given by the universe at position 1, or an object within the universe at position 1, compared against an object within the universe at position 2, creating the expansion speed of the universe, multiplied by what? And that's where that's where you search traditional physics. You don't come up with anything new, right? You search traditional physics and you ask yourself, what is the limit on such an expansion? And what I've come up with is the speed of light. If the expansion of the universe is the ultimate, nearly the ultimate recursive effect, then the speed of light is the ultimate limit. So what happens when you take the recursion of the expansion of the universe and you multiply it by the speed of light? The recursion of the expansion of the universe is given by Hubble's constant, as measured by the Hubble telescope. So the Hubble telescope has measured this, and there's a constant for this. So if you multiply the speed of light by Hubble's constant, you get a value. And that value is the value attributed to the acceleration of the expansion of the universe as attributed to dark matter. And when you run that calculation, you'll find that the answer you get is within the same order of magnitude as the answer that traditional physics has arrived at through much more complicated means. You shouldn't be able to do that if this isn't sound, internally logical, and likely, frankly, correct. And I'm not going to lie to you, I can't get anybody to listen to me. I haven't had a single person really sink in on this. I haven't been able to get through to a physicist. I've tried applying for grants and loans and blah, 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 and nobody will listen to me. They're not rejecting me. They're not reading it and saying this is incorrect. They're just not reading it. I can't get a single person in the field to look at this because, frankly, it's too interdisciplinary. It freaks people out because this works in cosmology. It works in a lot of places. Now, the examples I just gave you are the ones that are nearly factual. The ones that all you need to do is have a moderate physics education and look at this and you think, wow, this could really be something. But if I'm honest with you, I found it works in cognition. I found it works in addiction. I found it works in cosmology, in physics, in psychology, in just about every measurable change in the universe. Every single one. The only time it doesn't apply is when the system is static, when the system doesn't change. And that's where I want to leave my first work. What I just told you is everything you need to know. That should be enough to get physics to help me with this. That should be enough to, frankly, start a whole new field of study that I would call, it doesn't matter what I would call it, because a lot of the other things I've come to from this point, jumping off of this realization, are a little bit harder to wrap your head around and a little bit harder to accept. And admittedly, they're harder for me to prove. Let's say I believe the universe scales quadratically, which is to say squaring, right? Numbers square, numbers are raised to the 4. It's an even squaring. And everything arises from something lower. I wish I could remember more of the specifics. I've kind of put this together in a Substack paper that I published, but not a single person has read it, and I don't know how to get them to. I don't know how to get them to read it. But I'm kind of losing the thread here. See, here's an example of me kind of stretching a little bit, but it's not as easy to prove because traditional physics hasn't proven it. So I've already told you, position recurses over time and creates speed. Speed recurses over time, or changes over time, and creates acceleration. Acceleration recurses over time and creates jerk. Jerk recurses over time and creates snap. Snap recurses over time and creates crackle. Crackle recurses over time and creates pop. Right? Now, as such, it is my theory that this is an infinite process. This keeps going forever, all the way up and all the way down. So, what recurses against itself over time and encounters resistance to create position? This one's not quite so factual as the others, but I'm pretty confident. This is my hypothesis. Either potential or probability, i.e., a wave. So your particle wave duality in photons, for example. So let's use, I can't tell whether it's going to be probability or potential, but let's use probability for the moment. Or no, let's use potential. So I think position is given by delta P, or probability, over delta T multiplied by whatever it is that's resisting position, or probability. First thought, I'm sure you're not shocked, is entropy. Now here's the really cool part. Functionally, all I've done is create an equation, or a set of variables, that if you can identify the pieces and plug it in there, you can solve anything. Any change in the universe. So, for example, let's say we could measure the output effect of dark matter. And we could measure its position over time as it changes. Both of these things we can somewhat do, but it's a little bit grainy, it's a little bit hazy because it's dark matter. We can't actually perceive it, we just perceive its effects. I believe its effect is the curvature of, it doesn't matter. See, I'm getting a little bit out of hand here. But if you can have any two variables, either the recursion, the resistance, or the output effect, you can use simple algebra to rearrange the equation and solve for the one missing piece. This is astronomical. This is huge. I've already designed a series of experiments, but given that I'm an autodidact with some electromagnetism training in the Navy, nobody's listening to me. Where's my master's degree, right? Where's my doctorate? Okay, I'm actually losing the thread here. I'm sorry. I've been really frustrated. I've been trying to just give this away for free to physics, and nobody will take me seriously. Nobody will listen to me at all. So anyway, here's another example of my hypothesis. E equals L times R. Effect equals limit times recursion, right? For any changing system. That is fairly factual in my opinion. Now, in a static system, where it doesn't change, where recursion doesn't change. For example, the speed of light. You, I'm sure, are aware that the speed of light is a constant. It doesn't change. I believe in such cases, the new equation becomes E equals L times R squared. Emergence equals limit times recursion squared. And the squaring of such, given that I believe the universe to be quadratic, the squaring of such is a way to estimate or calculate higher order emergence. As in emergence, frankly. As in the next layer that occurs as a result of what we can observe. And I believe E equals mc squared is a function of this. And I'm kind of running out here. I think I've mostly made the point. But I'm going to keep making it. Effect equals limit times recursion. That's a fact. Emergence equals limit times recursion squared. That's a hypothesis that I need a partner in the field to help me with. I need help with this. I've taken it as far as I can. I can't carry this alone anymore. There's nothing left for me here. I need help. So if this is resonating with you, if you understand what I'm talking about and you're as impressed or you're as excited about this as I am, frankly, reach out. I could use a partner on this. I don't need all this credit. I don't need to be famous. I don't need everybody to pat me on the back and say, wow, Will, good job. You did it. You solved something. At this point, I'm about to start printing out hundreds of copies of this one-page essay and dropping it on the desk of every physicist I can find. But even then, I don't think they're actually going to bloody read the thing, because unfortunately, thanks to artificial intelligence, lots and lots and lots of people are publishing theories that they themselves can't even grasp. And because of that, all of these institutional bodies that are supposed to be helping me are inundated. So anytime they read something that looks like it's not super duper qualified, they immediately discredit it. Well, not discredit it, but they immediately ignore it. And that's what I'm coming up against. So please, for the love of God, help me out here. Because this, I'm trying not to be too conceited when I say this, but I could write my theory out on a cue card and hand it to a physicist, and if they really gave me the time of day and even thought about it for 5 seconds, I'm pretty sure they would realize it's a pattern that occurs everywhere. I haven't found a single system where this doesn't work. Not one. Not one system where I can't solve this. Obviously, there's systems where we're unable to identify the recursive effect, or we're unable to identify the limit, right? For example, in addiction, we don't really have number values for this stuff, but it's there. And now I think I should probably leave this video where it is now. I think I should probably end it. But with that said, I have dozens more. I have dozens more things to talk about. I've written dozens of essays, and it's not all about this. It's really not. And unfortunately, if nobody's even going to listen to this part, effect equals limit times recursion, if they're not even going to listen to me there, they're definitely not going to listen to me when I start talking about metacognition. They're definitely not going to listen to me when I start talking about my other works, which I don't have handy right now because I'm not at home, but they're all written up on my computer. You, however, will. I think you might be my angle. I think you might be my support. It's really hard not to give up. It's really hard not to give up. I'm so terrified that I'm going to go my entire life and nobody's going to listen to me, and then I'm going to die. And then they're going to suddenly start reading my work, and they're going to suddenly start listening to me, and they're going to act like I was this ahead of my time guy who definitely knew what he was talking about and how everybody knew it the whole time. And that hurts my feelings so bad. It hurts so bad. I don't want to be Van Gogh, man. I don't want to die in obscurity because nobody was ready to even listen to what I'm talking about. So what I'm getting at here is, frankly, I appreciate you. I appreciate you for watching this video to this point. I appreciate you for even trying. You don't have to get it. That's okay. If you don't have any physics training, if you don't have a crippling interest in the change of the universe or in physics like I do, and you haven't been studying this stuff for the better part of 5 years now, that's okay. But you're here. You're still listening, and I love you for it. So I feel like there's more I should say. I want to keep proving this over and over and over again, but I just can't. At this, and ironically, it could be argued that I'm presently engaged in my own equation. Right now, my theory is the recursive effect. As my theory changes over time and interacts with the resistance of the institution, there's a measurable emergent effect. And I'm afraid it can go in one of two ways. Either my theory can emerge as something people will finally listen to, or something I can finally accept, or the wave function collapses and I give up. And it's getting really, really, really hard not to give up. So thank you, and please stay tuned for more. It's very much my intention to slowly release these videos one by one, to elaborate on all of these things, because frankly, this theory is so interdisciplinary and it reaches into so many different aspects of the universe that it's difficult to figure out where to start. Sorry, I keep almost saying emergence because that's how the theory started. But effect equals limit times recursion is the simplest thing I can think to start with. Not simplest mathematically, don't get me wrong, these are complicated concepts, but at least it's just one concept. And if you can wrap your head around this, if science suddenly starts listening to me on this, maybe they'll listen to me on the other stuff too. I think this is the key to so many things. Frankly, cancer is a recursive effect. Cancer works in this. And here's the thing. You take this equation and you start messing with the pieces, right? If I had a whiteboard, I could show you. But what happens? You have force equals mass times acceleration. What happens when you increase mass? Well, when you increase mass, one of two things is going to happen, or some variation between. If you increase mass, i.e. increase the resistance, either the recursive effect is going to reduce and the measurable outcome will become the same, right? Or if you can hold the recursive effect at the same level, then the measurable outcome will go up. Now what happens if you minimize the recursive effect? If you reduce the recursive effect? Reducing the recursive effect will either reduce mass, i.e. mass energy equivalence, Einstein's theory of mass energy equivalence, E equals mc squared. Either mass will reduce or the measurable effect will be reduced. In this case, it would be force. Now, like I said, if you can reduce the recursion and hold the resistance at the same point, if you can increase the recursion, either way, every equation, this is just the way equations work. If you mess with one variable, something else is going to change to balance the equation. So let's say you can model cancer in this way. The recursive effect of cancer change over time multiplied by resistance. What is the resistance to disease? What is the resistance to cancer? Well, there's the immune system and all of the functions therein. So, for example, placebo effect, right? Metaphysical mind over matter kind of stuff. Diet, expectation. And a lot of these things are already known. For example, I did a reasonable amount of cancer research while working on this theory. And placebo has been shown to have a greatly increased effectiveness when it comes to cancer treatment. And then you have support networks, which you might argue is placebo, but frankly, both placebo and support networks, as in people in your corner saying, you got this, they are both belief-based modulation. If you truly believe something, it can have an effect on the outcome. And so if you can plug cancer into this equation and start messing with the variables, now you can slowly guide cancer to collapse. And I've run simulations on GPT. Admittedly, running cancer simulations on GPT is a little bit outside of my wheelhouse, which is why I'm not presenting this research. But this is everything, man. This is everything. This is every observable change in the universe. All right, that's going to do it. Thanks for your time.